And then the moment that he decided that he wanted to leave this earth and he made the decision for himself, and he was a fundamentally different person. He was really angry. He was angry that he had lost control over the disease in his life. And then he, smiling and laughing and joking, it had purpose again in like the last week of his life. I had this sense of finite amount of time that we have. What is the point of all of this like work and like hustle and walking around the city looking around, and nobody understands that I've just lost this person. It was like a slow drip afterwards. I kind of felt like I was just in survival mode. Simple everyday things become like rocks you have to climb over. I think understanding the difference between grief and like a mental health crisis or depression comes just with like experience and time. The first time I met grief was with my cousin Gabe in 2018. He had a very short but very fierce battle with pancreatic cancer that came at 42. So he was very young. And he fought really hard, but in the end, he made the decision to end his own life, which was my first time with grief, full stop, and also my first time encountering MAID. And the ability for someone to make that decision for themselves, which was a really powerful, like life-defining moment for me. Gabe's idea of like a life well lived was just having the people that he really loved around him at all times. So he was quite well off, and he was very quirky, very eccentric human. And he collected other very quirky, very eccentric humans as part of his like life's mission. So regardless of whether it was like a birthday party or a trip or whatever it may have been, he just like collected people to have around him. And it was the same in his death. So part of my role was just being in the collection of humans that Gabe decided that he wanted around his bedside, which was like maybe 20 deep. The process of watching him, like of witnessing his journey, was really fundamentally life-altering for me, just because of the way he was really angry. He was angry that he was sick. He was angry that he couldn't fight it. He was angry that he had lost control over the disease in his life and the ability to make autonomous decisions for himself. He was like, people were changing tubes for him. He refused to be in the hospital, so his wife was like literally changing tubes at his bedside, and we were all kind of like had our roles to play in different capacities. When somebody had to walk away because they couldn't handle it anymore, somebody else would come in, and he was really difficult. He was like a very difficult dying person. He was like a real jerk about it for a really long time, mostly because he was so angry and so afraid and didn't want this to be his reality. And then the moment that he decided that he wanted to leave this earth and he made the decision for himself, and he fought about it back and forth with his family, his wife, and finally everyone was like, okay, we trust you. Like, you make the decision you need to make. If the fight's over, the fight's over. And so he decided that he wanted to go with MAID, and he chose July 1st, which was his Independence Day. And then as soon as he made that decision, it was very quick. It was like a week or so that we had to prepare. He was a fundamentally different person in that week. He was like smiling and laughing and joking and like writing things for people and deciding who he wanted at his bedside and choosing music. And he had always like had interest in Buddhism, so he decided he wanted a monk there. And he was, writing wills and doing last things, and it was like had purpose again. Interestingly enough, in like the last week of his life, he found purpose in dying, which was kind of a wild thing to imagine. Like understanding agency in that sense, like that we all have the agency to hopefully, if God forbid we don't, but like ideally we all have the agency to be able to make that decision for ourselves when the time comes, if the fight really is over. And that was such a perspective shift for me. I had a really interesting like aftermath, because it was my first big loss and my first time close to death in that way. And I kind of blew up my life afterwards in the best way, but I really like rearranged all the chess pieces on the board, because I was like, I had this sense of the like finite amount of time that we have, which I hadn't had before. I was young and I was like, well, we have tons of time to say all the things we want to say and love all the people we want to love. And go on all the adventures we want to go on. And Gabe had been like working so much, like I think it was the work that caused him his disease, the stress and the work of his like high stress job. And so for me, I was like, here's this person who has worked so hard. His whole thing was like he was going to work as hard as he could and retire at 45. And he died at 42. So there was like a perspective shift for me there that was really like, well, what are we doing here? What is the point of all of this like work and like hustle? And if sometimes you don't even make it past the goalpost that you were arbitrarily setting for yourself. So that was a really big perspective shift for me. And then just existing as a human on the planet that had known death now in that way, because I hadn't known it before and I didn't really understand grief. And I'd met other people that had lost people really close to them, but I never had the knowing of what that actually felt like in my body. And I remember in the days after just kind of like walking around the city, looking around and being like, nobody like understands. Like nobody understands that I've just lost this person that's like so important to me and so close to me. And everyone's just like buying apples at the grocery store or like yelling at the barista or like, it was just such an interesting like perspective shift. It's the only word I can think of is, a fundamental perspective shift. I think the moment that it became real was in the aftermath, for sure. Like not in the moment. It was also very surreal and very like, I think you kind of like detach from yourself in a way as a protective measure, or I did anyway. So I think in the aftermath, like in the months after was when it became real. It was like in the days following when you're like, okay, still not here. That really happened. That wasn't just an experience. That was like an actual human being, So I think it was like a slow drip afterwards, the reality of it. In the year after, there would definitely be moments where I would like, literally my body would stop on the street and I would just like, not see him, but like feel a presence or feel him. And in moments after, there was always like things that would remind me of him, but not in a way where you're like, oh, that's a nice memory. Like it was more of a embodied memory, more like of a presence of, oh, he would have really loved that. But it's hard to explain. It's like it exists in your body instead of just as like a cerebral, I remember that person. Yeah, we had a huge support team because of like inherently who Gabe was and the people that he collected. In the years after, I became like very, very close with his community. So his wife, Amanda, his best friend, Hope, and her family, his best friend, Ryan, and our other friend, Chance. We kind of like formed this, and my family, obviously, we formed this like bond afterwards that still exists in different ways. Obviously, people like this was 8 years ago now. So people move on with their lives and go separate ways and stuff. But those connections for me are what got me through that time and are also like still such strong. I think that the griefs that you make or the bonds that you make in grief rather are like pretty unshakable. It's funny that I don't actually think about my own mortality that much, honestly. I think that maybe I did a little bit after Gabe, but that feeling sort of fades with time. And then I think in more recent years there's been so much grief in the past few years that I actually haven't like zoomed out to think about my own mortality around it all. I've been like too consumed with the actual reality of the people that we're losing and the community support and all of that. Like I haven't centered myself in it. I don't really think about it. I think secondary grief is something that maybe isn't touched on as much because the people sort of in the hallways are just as important as the people in the rooms. And I've seen that in like some pretty real ways in the last couple of years. One with supporting my partner through the death of his parents, and then the other in being part of a larger community that lost somebody really close to us through suicide and sort of banding together as a community to try and help that person stay with us. Ultimately, we weren't successful in that, but the things that it taught me about community and supporting each other through those really hard moments is like the support system is just as important as the direct caregiver. I think as a secondary or like a part of a larger community or in any sort of like secondary position of grief, you feel guilty if you want to tap out for a minute, because there's trying to articulate it. There's like an accountability, I think is the word, that maybe feels like if you tap out or if you take a break or if you walk away for a minute, you're not supporting the other people in the way that they need to be supported. But you need to take care of yourself too.
When you're in this sort of supporting role, did you give yourself permission to grieve yourself? And what's that complexity?
I think it all becomes really blurry. Like, I would say for a solid 2 years, I kind of felt like I was just in survival mode. And I think that's probably pretty common for most people when you're navigating like deep grief and illness really close to you and mental health catastrophes and those things. There's like, protection mode that you go into that's almost like you have to detach from the reality of it sometimes. And, my partner and I would just find ourselves like getting home at the end of the day and being like, we don't have the capacity to do anything. So we would just turn on the TV and kind of just like hold each other on the couch, or, even like getting out for a walk or like doing something that is good for your body feels like it's like an insurmountable task in that moment. And I think you have to have a lot of compassion for yourself to be like, it's okay that I didn't get 100 steps in today. It's okay that I like didn't eat a banana. It's okay that I cried. It's okay that I didn't show up the way that I wanted to today, or I got angry, or I like snapped at a stranger, or I, like having compassion in those moments for yourself and for the other people too. It's really important. I don't think you ever get over grief. I don't think that's the point of grief for me anyway. Like there's such a beauty in it too that I think maybe isn't talked about as much. There's this like the transformational power of grief and the way that it can like enrich your life and enrich your relationship with other people. So I don't know if it's something to get over. Obviously the like acuteness of it, the like can't get off the couch and don't want to talk to another human being for days, or like that acuteness of it, I think is something that you can, with time only, there's nothing else, just time, you can sort of like scale that wall. But the residual effects of it, I don't think ever leave. It's just like part of your being. It's part of like the fabric of your being. I guess I can only speak for myself because I don't know what grieving feels like for other people. I would imagine I have a pretty good like wealth of knowledge about what it could feel like, but I only know what it feels like for me. And I think everyone grieves differently. So for me, when I know that I'm in deep grief, because I think that, again, like grief never really goes away, but there's like a buoyancy in it after time. There's like a gentleness and a buoyancy in it. But in deep grief, I think I know that I'm in deep grief when there's like a survival mode mechanism that just like flips on. Where I'm like, it's almost like you're going through the motions of life as opposed to living it. You're just like I said about like being out on the street and seeing people and you're like, they're just buying apples and doing their thing. And you like can't even comprehend like the simple task of buying an apple. It feels like the hardest fucking thing you could possibly do in the world. It's like giving somebody $2 for an apple. You're like, I'm gonna crumble. Like I can't do that. So I think when like simple everyday things become like rocks you have to climb over, that's what grief feels like for me, like deep, the trauma of grief. I think understanding the difference between grief and like a mental health crisis or depression for myself, I don't think I would have been able to actually like articulate that before. So when my cousin Gabe died, I was definitely in a depression for months after, and I didn't really know I was because I didn't know how that felt in my body. I've been very, very fortunate in my life. My mental health is quite strong. I've not dealt with like debilitating anxiety or depression or anything like that in my life prior. But I remember months later sort of like coming out of a fog, almost like somebody had like turned the light switch on or like taken a pillow off of my face or something. And I was like, oh, everything's just brighter and crisper and like I can see things. It was like I had like glasses that were the wrong prescription for a few months. So I know that feeling in my body now, which I think is an important thing. But I wouldn't have known it before that first big loss. So I think in that first big loss, there may be a moment where you actually don't understand. And they all are connected, grief and depression and your mental health and all those things, like they're all bundled up in the same place. So learning how to distinguish one from the other comes just with like experience and time, I think, and more loss, sadly, like understanding how loss feels in your body and how to like separate it from a severe mental health crisis or depression. I would say to myself, if I had the chance before going through all of the things, I would say to myself that these moments are going to make you so much stronger. Like these experiences are going to make your life so much more beautiful, even if they're like achingly sad. And they're going to bring you closer to the people that you love. They're going to show you community in a way that you never imagined you could be shown community. Grief is like the ultimate teacher. It sounds really corny, but it's so true. I would just like allow myself to be taught, not fight it, just like understand it for what it is and appreciate all the gifts that it's brought me on the other side, because I feel like my life is so much richer because of the people that I've lost. Truly, like I'll miss those people and I'll carry them with me forever, but like what an honor to be able to carry them. You have the prettiest tear right now. Oh, if I could plan my departure, it'll just be a big dirty dance party with all the people I love around me, for sure. That's it. It's simple. Yeah, rich in community and big music and joy. And I'm also like, I do really love validation. So I think I would definitely want everybody to write something really pretty about me, that's something they love about me. I definitely want to hear all of that before I go. I think I would give tribute to community. It's like, especially in the last few years, that's been like the one thing that I have been so grateful for and so awed by is community. And if you're lucky enough to have those people, like accept the help when it's offered. I think we were talking about this, the like tendency to not want to burden other people is really real, and understanding that sometimes people are really happy to help, especially if they're in a secondary sort of position and they have the capacity to show up for you. Like you don't have to push them away. If they're showing up, it's because they want to. So just like understanding that hopefully you don't have to do it alone. Grief has impacted my community in a very real way because we lost somebody that was like tight knit in our community. So I've seen the ripple effect that it has, and also seen the bond that it creates. There's sort of like two sides to the coin. There's like because everybody deals with grief in different ways and everyone's on different journeys and everyone's on different like levels of their grief journey. It's hard to, you're never going to sort of like match people where they're at. So I think one of the gifts in community is just having like a ton of compassion for where people are at. And if they're not behaving the way that you would in that situation, it's because their grief looks a lot different than yours. But the beauty of community is to be able to recognize like those strengths and faults and to show up when you need to and step away when you need to and boundary yourself. But also like be together when it counts. And